Now, we only have a few weeks left of the season, and I still have no idea who our under 21 Canadian Player of the Year is going to be. So we're going to bring in some outside help this week to talk to us and maybe try and give us some options. Josh Healy, who's joining us from all the way out east. Josh, welcome to the CPL Newsroom. Good to have you. And we have talked about this before on this show. We've gone as far as to call certain players front runners for the under 21 Canadian award. But I have no idea. There's like, I was doing the math, or I guess kind of picking names before this, and there was like maybe 10 to 12 guys that I could conceivably have seen nominated for this award. So Josh, I asked you to maybe just think a little bit about some of the options before the show, and maybe you can just start us off for our conversation here with where you've kind of landed.
Yeah, you make a great point, Charlie. There is just so much talent to pick from this year for the U21 category. But for my money, I kind of have to throw my hat in for Halifax Wanderers striker Thiago Coimbra. Obviously, he's been injured in recent weeks, but before that, he was in excellent form. He's got 11 goals and 3 assists so far this year, which in any other year might put him up for the lead in goal contributions. Of course, we've seen, players like Sam Salter really pop off and create a lead there. But one thing to consider as well is last year's U21 Player of the Year was Kwesi Poku. Coimbra's actually scored more goals than Poku in less minutes, which I think is quite the achievement into itself. And I mean, just his value to the squad as well. You've kind of seen Halifax flag a little bit offensively without having that big number 9 up front. So for my money, I'd have to give it to Coimbra so far.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good good argument. And we can see how much the Wanderers are struggling at the moment without him. They desperately need him back before the playoffs, right? Mitch, there's a lot of names out there, though. Maybe throw some more at us and maybe make a couple counter arguments to Thiago Coimbra.
Yeah, cut this part for the intrigue factor, but I'm actually kind of with Josh on this one. But another guy who I think is actually right there and pushing Coimbra for the award right now is Noah Batney, who's been the central focal piece of that Athletic Ottawa very young back three, all three of whom again could very well conceivably be nominated for this award. But what I like about Batney is again just his ability to quarterback that unit, to control it. But more than anything, like, we know this Ottawa team loves to play with possession. They're probably going to break the CPL record for most possession in a year in terms of having the ball. And Abatney's been so important to that. He's still at 95.9% pass completion, which is insane for a player across the entire season. And again, he's played 425 forward passes and 101 long balls. Like, these aren't just, 10-yard passes. A lot of them obviously are, but these aren't just, those side-to-side passes. Like, he is one of the guys breaking lines. And again, for a young player to be in such an important role, and this is a theme across the league as well, as you look at the roles that these under 21 players are playing. Like, they're not just small cameo appearances, like, they're playing central roles to their club. But I don't think there's any more so than Abatney leading this Athletic Ottawa backline, a young and experienced backline, and they haven't looked like it all year. And I think Abatney's been a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Ottawa's tough because there's just so many options, right? I think you're right that Abatney is probably the standout, but I mean, I don't think anybody would be insanely surprised if it was Cloutier or Kozlowski or even Gabi Antonoro, who I think has been very, very important, arguably the most consistent for Atletico Ottawa. He's kind of big, and he's kind of such a fixture on that team's wing that we sometimes forget that he's one of their under 21s, right? Because he's also been around for a while with Ottawa, which I think is particularly impressive. I think this is also a good week where we need to start shouting out Jose Masunda at Forge. He scored again, incredible goal, by the way, against Pacific. He's up to 4 goals and 5 assists now, so he's tied for Forge's team lead in goal contributions with Nena and Poma, and that's not a club where it's easy to do that. Nor is it a club where it's easy to break into a starting 11. I think he started 5 of the last 7 for Forge now. And one of the ones where he came off the bench was in Ottawa, where he scored the 82nd minute equalizer. So I've been very, very impressive with his kind of confidence and ability to break into a very, very difficult team to break into at a very important point of the year. Josh, we'll come back to you here, though. I don't know if you've got any other names to throw out. I'm sure there are plenty, but maybe as well from you, just more broadly, kind of how impressed are you with this year's under 21 crop, and do you think it's maybe the best we've ever seen in the CPL?
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, there's so many names that we could throw out. You guys have already mentioned a couple, but just in terms of the talent pool and the amount of minutes that coaches are giving these players, for my money, I think it's the highest talent level or the highest ceiling that we've kind of seen so far in the league. I believe it was in 2019 where they set the record, and I don't think they're necessarily going to break that this year. But just in terms of the impact that the players are having, I don't think we've seen anything like it in the Canadian Premier League before.
Yeah, I agree. I just after this weekend, 29,025 minutes to under 21s. I believe in 2019 it was something around 36,000, but that was kind of partly because Pacific went crazy and like they had something like 14,000 on their own. Most of their, I think about half of their starting 11 was under 21s that year, but this is the most in a while. And just as you guys mentioned, so many now. I've written them out here at the side of my screen here. We've got Tierno Ba, Adam Perlman, we haven't mentioned, Gareth Semenkov and Calvary, Christian Greco-Taylor, Miles Morgan, Matteo Campagna, Emmerich Fotzing. It goes on and on and on. It is so just remarkable to see how many of these young players are not just getting minutes because they have to, but getting minutes because they're actually useful and impactful for their clubs. Most teams have absolutely smashed past the 2,000 minute threshold ages ago and didn't even have to think about it because these under 21s are just important members of their team. But if we zoom out here, I'm going to put both of you guys on a spot for a second here, because if we zoom out here, part of the reason that we want under 21 young Canadian players playing in the Canadian Premier League is that we want them to develop into top quality professional footballers, and we want them one day to play for the Canadian national team. So, putting you both on the spot, of the myriad very young players in the CPL who are so talented, if there was one that you could most picture playing one day for the Canadian senior national team, who would it be? Coming back to Josh first, because I think Mitch has an answer, and I'm hoping you steal it.
Yeah, for myself, if I had to go with one, it would probably be Noah Botnay, just in terms of his profile. He's got the size. Again, he has the pedigree, the resume. Of course, he spent time in Europe and in European academies, and then he's got some good connections as well. I wrote a piece for OneSoccer last year about his connection to the De Rosario family. So I don't think anyone would be surprised, kind of for him to move on next year and go to a higher level. And then I think he's already kind of got the eye of Canadian men's national team head coach Jesse Marsh.
Yeah, Atletico Ottawa have been pretty clear, by the way, that they do want to help these players move on to bigger and better things. I mean, Batnay himself was pretty honest and candid before the season about how he was kind of looking to use Ottawa as a springboard into something like Europe. He played in Italian academies at Lazio and Roma, I believe, which I didn't know was allowed. But he played for both those clubs, the youth player, before coming back to York. But Mitchell, I know that was probably your answer, but do you have another one?
Yeah, I'll go with his Atletico Ottawa teammate then, Sergei Kozlovsky, who is a guy who, has been heavily involved with the Canadian youth teams, captained, I believe, the under-17 side, scored some goals for the under-20s as well. A guy who's been well involved within the program, which is why it was such a coup that Atletico Ottawa even brought him in the first place. And, now we're seeing the value of getting a guy like that professional minutes at just 17. And again, he started the season as just a 16-year-old as well. So, he's got an under-17 World Cup coming up. In I think November is when it starts. So he's got he'll have some opportunities there to show up on the world stage. And again, if he can continue to progress through the ranks, like this is a guy with boatloads of talent for a 17-year-old. And again, you never think he's 17 when you watch him on the pitch, and that's the highest compliment you can give a center back who's that age.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very good shout. Producer Benedict in our private chat here reminds us that Adam Perlman trained with the national team when they are in Halifax, which is a good shout. And again, he's also definitely a player that we constantly forget as a U21 because he looks so mature and so solid at right back for the Wanderers. Again, he's a player who's on loan from TFC. We'll see kind of what happens with him after this season, whether he can push on and maybe look for some MLS minutes, or if he would prefer to continue getting those senior professional minutes in the CPL. we'll see with him. But he's, again, a very, very impressive player. Yeah, I mean, Josh, maybe you can talk a little bit because you've watched Adam play all year.
Yeah, he's been almost revolutionary, to be honest. There were a lot of questions what was going to happen in Halifax this year. Was Zachary Fernandez moving on, and what would kind of happen at right back? And Perlman stepped in seamlessly. I was just going to mention as well, actually, when he was training with the men's national team in Halifax, that was the second time he's trained with the national team as well. I had a chance to speak to him about it. And when there was the camp in Toronto in fall last year, he was also a participant in that. So yeah, he's definitely a guy who's on the radar. And again, he was sent down to Halifax to get minutes, and he's delivered. If he's been healthy, he's been a first choice selection for head coach Patrice Geyser. So he's a guy who has a very high ceiling. And just talking to some people around the league and also around TFC, he's a guy who's very well regarded. So that's also a very good show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he went looking for minutes and he got almost literally every single one of them available.
As many as he could get, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so many good options. Again, like we could sit here for hours and name every single U21 player in the CPL and talk about how good they've been this year. But I think we're going to have to leave it there, fellas. So thank you very, very much. And we'll wrap up the show here with just a quick look ahead at what is to come next weekend. Obviously, we've already talked about the Canadian Championship final. That's on Wednesday night. Don't miss that. And then also don't miss the chase continuing this weekend with a doubleheader on Saturday, starting with the Halifax Wanderers and York United at the Wanderers grounds, followed by Forge FC hosting Vancouver FC. Maybe Canadian Championship winners, Vancouver FC. Maybe we can all dream. Later at Hamilton Stadium that afternoon. Sunday's double slate begins with Valor hosting Atletico Ottawa, and then Pacific hosting Cavalry FC. Valor and Pacific both looking to play spoiler after both those sides were officially mathematically eliminated from contention this weekend. But anyway, still lots to fight for despite the 5 spots being locked up. A lot of benefits for finishing higher up the table. That battle for third is pretty interesting, and we still have quite the title race on our hands between Forge and Atletico Ottawa. Don't miss a minute of it, all of it on OneSoccer.